Hi, this is my podcast assignment. I would like to add that there will be a trigger warning because there will be mentions of suicide, child abuse, neglect, and torture. I wanted to show the realities of Indigenous children in the child welfare system. There is a point where everyone understands that Indigenous kids go through a lot, but I don't think they realize how much. I want to show as well how this affects Indigenous kids. I want to build empathy for these kids. Not just surface level, but deep empathy. Indigenous kids face a lot in their lives, simply because they're Indigenous. Now adding the cultural loss, the abuse, the racism in the system, on top of all of that. These kids go through a lot, and a significant part of the child welfare system is Indigenous kids. There are over 5,000 kids in the welfare system, and over 3,500 of them are Indigenous. And more Indigenous kids are out of the system in comparison to non-Indigenous kids. These numbers have been consistent since 2001. There is a lot of stereotyping that goes on. A mother has reached out to child welfare asking for help to get out of a domestic abuse situation, but due to the stigma around Indigenous parents and people and stereotypes, they ended up taking her kids away from her. Another example, unfortunately, due to this, she ended up taking her own life. This is an unfortunately common result. Indigenous parents asking for help and the welfare system taking their kids away. Another example of the system failing is a case not too long ago. I will warn you, this one's very harsh. This case is about one kid who ended up dying, unfortunately, and his sister who were badly beaten in their foster home. The two kids, aged 11 and 9, were beaten, tortured, and starved. They were forced to eat their own feces, vomit, and dog food, and they were made to do extensive workout routines while their eyes were taped shut and naked or dressed in diapers. The boy had died from being beaten with a 2x4, and the girl was taken in for examination, and they found marks from zip ties and multiple bruises and wounds. To add to this horrific case, the foster parent had recorded everything. There is over 16,000 videos and over 400 hours worth of footage. People were calling for the Ministry of Child Care to resign due to her ministry's lack of check-in in this home. After they were placed, they were not checked in for the next 7 months. Routinely, per procedure, you are supposed to check in every 3 months. It starts at a week, then 2 weeks, and then a month, and then every 3 months, and then every 6 months. Her response in the whole situation was even worse. When doing an interview with Global News, she kept repeating the phrase, "I'm so sorry this happened, it's truly awful," with every question they asked her. The foster parents were charged with aggravated assault and manslaughter. This case is just disgusting. For someone to do that to these kids, and then not to be checked on for months, it shows the dynamic when it comes to Indigenous kids and the lack of care. However, the child welfare system has been an issue with Indigenous people for decades. This is the 60 Scoop being the most prominent. The 60 Scoop was a mass removal of Indigenous kids from their families into the child welfare system, in most cases without consent from families or tribes. What was the reason for the 60 Scoop, you may ask? And the 60 Scoop happened not because the government was genuinely concerned with the well-being of Indigenous children, but primarily as an extension of the racist policies against Indigenous communities was meant to alienate Indigenous kids into a Western society and strip them of their culture and communities. But just recently, the BC government handed over the Indigenous part of the child welfare system to Indigenous leaders and had a $28 million settlement for all the abuse in the system. These kids have been through so much just because they are different. How is that right? The child welfare system is built on systematic racism, and that we need to make a change. BC has made the first step, but we need to make sure other provinces make those same steps and finally allow Indigenous people to exist.